So, I have to admit, you guys are right. You guys said, well, that MKZ you're working on, that the other shops couldn't find the overheating concern, and then it ends up at your shop, and you couldn't find the overheating concern. Wasn't doing anything. It just wasn't overheating. And I don't have multiple hours to drive the vehicle long distance like this gentleman had before it would overheat. So I said, well, maybe it's a erratic thermostat. Maybe something's going on with that. I mean, I'll charge you the minimal and we'll get a good thermostat and put it in there. It'll be a real clean job and I'll just knock it out for you. And the customer said, yeah, you know what, none of that stuff's ever been changed. Let's just go ahead and do it. And so I showed you guys the coolant trick where you use the vacuum refill tool on the tank and then put 4 or 5 inches of vacuum on it, and you can actually swap out parts in the AC or in the cooling system without losing all your coolant, because it'll pull what they call head vacuum or pressure on it, and then everything won't rush out. You'll get a little gargling effect. And we changed out the thermostat. Sure enough, after an hour and a half, 2 hours of the guy driving it around, it overheated. When I go out to him on the side of the road and I see that it's like weird, it's erratic. It'll go hot and then it starts to come back, and then it'll go hot and it starts to come back. Almost seems like an electrical problem and not so much an overheating problem. So I get to looking at all the things in the system that could possibly cause any kind of electrical issues at all. And I was like, you know, these fans have been known to cause problems with the electrical system in these older Fords. They act up, and it has the motor assembly and everything built. So as I'm looking at this vehicle more and more and more and more, I'm like, why is one of the fans not kicking on? It always kicked on before when I ran the key on running test. And even the other garage that I contacted that worked on the vehicle, he said the same thing. Yeah, the fans would kick on every time it was here. And I was like, well, I think I know what's going on here. The primary fan, the big motor fan, it receives power first, and it sends it over to the secondary fan, the condenser fan, whenever the AC's on, and it's like a helper fan. But the main fan never turns on, not one single time once it starts to act up. Every time it was in my place, my shop, the customer didn't want to leave it a long time, so we couldn't actually look at it a long time. They wanted to sit there and wait for their diagnosis and then leave. The problem is sometimes these things don't show themselves right away, and had I had more time to let that vehicle sit in my stall and run and run and run and run, or had more paid time to go drive the vehicle, I could have duplicated the concern. But customers don't want to pay that type of money to just have a technician drive their vehicle to duplicate the concern, or pay that money to have it take up one of my stalls at work where I could be putting other work in order for it to malfunction. So needless to say, I did notice what was going on after the customer called me and he was on the side of the road. The primary fan wasn't kicking on at all, and it was causing the gauge to jump around as the low speed fan was actually kicking on. The helper fan was kicking on, and it would pull it down some and then it would overheat, and pull it down some and then overheat. So I told the customer, I was like, look man, what I want you to do is I want you to run the vehicle, but don't run the AC. If you can, just park the vehicle for a little bit and use your other car and get a good cooling fan set up, and I'll just knock it out for you real quick. And sure enough, he ended up finding a company local in Chicago and ordered the fan through them, and it came in within a week. Real nice fan too. It was all vacuum sealed in a box, and it's called Depot or something like that. Depot. Anyway, I installed the fan. Primary came on immediately. I knew something was wrong with it. I just couldn't put my hand on what it was because I never had the vehicle long enough to do it. And that's a lot of times, a lot of problems with customers. They don't want to pay for you to keep looking at it and keep looking at it and keep looking at it. Sometimes, you know, that's what you have to do. But here's the shot of the vehicle leaving, and kind of me talking about the situation yesterday before I was getting off work. And yeah, it was a stupid cooling fan, wasn't kicking on. But it would kick on in my stall. It just wouldn't kick on after it run for several hours, and then it would just malfunction. Here it is.
That 2010 Lincoln MKZ came back in after I did the thermostat, and it was a problem child. Went to another clinic, They couldn't figure it out. Went to 2 other places. They couldn't figure it out. Came here. I couldn't figure it out because it would never overheat. And then he said, just randomly, you know, in the middle of a drive, could be a 50-minute drive, it just overheats when he gets to where he's going and then stops and goes to leave. What I ended up finding out is this fan here, the main drive, power comes in this side here and then transfers over. This fan, the motor's burned out. It would never turn on, and nobody caught that. Or I called the other clinic that did look at it. I know the guy, I know the owner. He said both of them would turn on. He said when I would do a key-on running test, both would turn on, but it would never turn on for me, not one single time doing a key-on running test. And then when I ran power and ground to it with my power probe, it would never turn on. It was junk. Took the new one, $200, made by Delpo or Depot. I don't know what the hell it is. What is it called? Depot cooling fan assembly, based out of Illinois, and it fired right up. Both fans worked like brand new, no issues at all, but this one would never start. That's the update on the old girl. I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here, go home, wash up, and have an easy Monday morning.